To the outside world, Ariji Kai looked like just another gloomy high schooler, quiet, antisocial, and easy to ignore. But beneath that dull exterior was something far more dangerous. He was a professional assassin, efficient, ruthless, and terrifying. None of his targets had ever lived to tell the tale. His classmates couldn't stand him. That cold attitude, that eerie aura, everything about him screamed, "Stay away." And they did, though not without the occasional bullying. He never reacted, never cared. But things didn't stay ordinary for long. One day, everything flipped. The entire class was suddenly transported to another world, a place built on swords and magic. There, a strange messenger appeared, claiming they'd all been summoned as heroes to defeat the Demon King. To help with the job, each of them was granted a superpower. Naturally, Ariji Kai ended up with the strongest one of all. But to understand how it all started, let's start the story from the beginning. A man was sprinting through a shadowy alley, panicked and desperate. Thinking he'd lost whoever was chasing him, he paused to catch his breath. A second later, cold steel touched his throat. He tried to bargain, money, mercy, whatever it took. But the blade didn't hesitate. The next morning, that same killer was just a high school student again, yawning on his way to school. Ariji Kai hated mornings, especially after a full night of work. As usual, the classroom buzzed when he walked in. Whispers, stares, nothing new. Midu Shuji, the ever-smiling class president and soccer ace, greeted him like always. Kai returned it with a blank stare and took his seat. Nearby, Nagase Rin, popular, stylish, always with something to say, watched the interaction and shook her head. To her, Kai was just being rude again. She told Shuji he shouldn't waste his energy on people like that. Shuji brushed it off, blaming tiredness. Then came the loud entrance of Erasure Shunsuke, the infamous gang leader and walking problem. A few students greeted him, but when he noticed Kai dozing off instead of acknowledging him, his ego took a hit. He marched over to Kai's desk, ready to start something. Kai didn't flinch. He caught Arashi's arm mid-motion, shut him down without even standing up, and went right back to sleep. Erasure, annoyed but unsure what just happened, muttered under his breath and backed off. Kinzaki Rin, the school's untouchable top beauty, finally spoke up, telling them to quiet down. Smart, skilled, and respected, she didn't need to raise her voice to get attention. Before Erasure could say anything to her, Hashimoto Mairi stepped in. Disciplinary committee type, rule-obsessed and dead serious. Ready to go full enforcement mode. Narumi Yoshia, the class clown and certified loudmouth, joked that Erasure would flatten her. Eventually, everyone backed off. The classroom settled. This was Shinzo High School's first-year class, and on the surface, it was just another ordinary day. But beneath that calm was a classroom packed with tension, and Kai, as usual, kept his head down, trying to stay out of it all. That's when a strange sensation prickled beneath his skin, pulling his attention toward Shuji's feet. A bright blue light began to pulse from the floor. Within seconds, a magic circle took form, burning into the classroom tiles. Confusion spread, fast the circle expanded, stretching across the entire floor. Shuji stepped up, trying to take control, telling everyone to get out. But Kai already knew they won't making it in time. The light flared violently, and then everything went white. When it faded, the entire class lay unconscious on the cold, stone floor of some ancient structure. Kai was the first to wake up, eyes scanning the unfamiliar space. Massive stone walls, towering pillars for cover, one narrow exit. It looked like a castle ripped straight out of an old RPG. One by one, the others began to stir. Panic followed, chaos spreading. But Shuji, thankfully, stepped up again, calm, collected, the kind of guy who could pull the class back from the edge. Kai felt a bit more grounded, knowing Shuji was holding it together. Then Erasure jumped to his feet, all bravado, barking orders at his usual tag-alongs. But Kai shut that down fast. Something wasn't right. He could hear footsteps approaching from the other side of the door. Then the door creaked open. A girl and an old man stepped in, dressed like they walked straight out of a medieval fantasy. Long cloaks, intricate armor, outdated fashion, definitely not from around here. The girl, confident and composed, addressed the group, calling them hero candidates like it was the most natural thing in the world. The students didn't know how to react. Kai, meanwhile, was already analyzing. The old man moved like a trained sword user, his posture tight, his awareness sharp. The girl, on the other hand, had some tone to her frame, but nothing too threatening. Still, she didn't seem ordinary. She introduced herself as Leonora, Archbishop of the Holy Country of Digrest. The man beside her, Gauss, her knight and protector. Erishur didn't buy it. Never heard of that country, didn't trust a word. But she held her ground and told him she is not messing with them. Shuji stepped up again, explaining their side of things. No one understood what was happening, and the confusion wasn't helping. Leonora laid it out. They weren't dreaming. They had been summoned, dragged into a parallel world. According to her, they were humanity's last hope, chosen to defeat some so-called demon king. The title? Hero Candidates. No one wanted to believe it, but reality didn't leave much room for denial. Gauss warned Erishur to watch his mouth when speaking to the saint of the country, but Erishur didn't flinch. The lack of reaction was enough to make Gauss draw his sword, though Leonora quickly stepped in to calm him down. Still, Erishur lunged forward. Kai, watching from the side, couldn't help but be impressed by his guts. But before the attack could connect, Gauss flicked his sword with lightning speed, leaving a thin cut on Arashi's forehead. The strike was so fast, no one even saw it happen. Leonora offered an apology for Gauss's aggression and told them she'd explain everything, on the condition that they shut up and listen. Her tone shifted fast, calm to cold just like that. She laid it out. The Demon King's invasion had pushed humanity to the edge. The country of Digrest was still resisting, but they no longer had the strength to stop the invasion alone. Kai thought it sounded like every other doomsday story he'd ever heard. Leonora kept going. According to her, they were humanity's last hope. That didn't sit well with the students. Most of them had never even thrown a punch, let alone fought a war. Some of the girls had already started crying. Gauss told them it sounded impossible, but they had no choice, unless they wanted to stay trapped in this world forever. The shock hit hard, but Kai saw through it. Gauss wasn't just being honest. He was trying to light a fire under them. People who've only known peace can't just switch to killing overnight. They need more than words. They needed talent, training, and something to fight for. Erishur stood up, blood dripping down his face. He cursed them for treating them like pawns, and made it clear he hated every second of it. Gauss noticed something in him. His spirit hadn't cracked. A spark that might turn into something useful. He gripped his sword again, considering whether to end the trouble before it started. But then Leonora stepped in again. She was already healing Arashi's wound. She said the power she was using came from the system, granted to them by the gods. It was basically magic, simplified, so they'd understand. Kai caught the hint. She knew their culture too well to be guessing. This wasn't the first time someone from their world had been summoned. She walked over to Shuji, explaining that this system was the reason they'd all been brought here. She raised her hand, and suddenly Shuji's wrist lit up. A sort of pure light appeared in his grip. She said each of them could awaken their divine protection, innate powers tied to the system. She admitted it was selfish to call them here and then ask for their strength. But now that they were here, there was no going back. Shuji pointed out that power alone wouldn't change anything. They weren't ready to fight. Leonora agreed. They'd be trained, and during that time, they'd be protected. Shuji stepped up and took control. He knew everyone was on edge, but made it clear that the first thing they needed was intel and protection. The rest of the class listened. No one argued. When Leonora saw that the group was finally in sync, she started handing out divine powers. Murari got telekinesis. Erishur was handed explosion powers. Rina received fire, Yoshia got wind, and the rest were given their own flashy abilities. Each one different, each one powerful. Leonora asked if anyone was left. Kai raised his hand. She granted him his power, and right away, his vision began to shift. The moment it settled, he could read Leonora's stats like a status screen. His eyes turned red. She told him he got a rare ability, the power of judgment. It gave him access to other people's stats and details. Erishur tested his powers as well, and joked that Kai only got a change in eye color. Kai observed how his classmates were already acting arrogant, despite knowing nothing about this world and relying on powers that weren't even truly theirs. Still, he remained calm. After all, he had other ways to kill if it came to that. Once everyone had their powers, Leonora told them to take some rest. In the evening, the hero candidates were each escorted to their private rooms. But Kai, curious and restless, slipped out through his window to gather more information. Outside, the guards were patrolling and casually mocking the hero candidates, calling them weak and questioning how such kids were supposed to defeat the Demon King. One guard even suggested that the saint must know something they didn't. Kai quietly listened in, then used his judgment ability to scan one of the guards, discovering that he only possessed swordsmanship skills. Without drawing attention, Kai moved on, hoping to learn more. He also took note of the city's layout. It was a fortified structure, and the inner castle was tightly guarded, making infiltration difficult. Realizing it wasn't the right time, he decided to wait for a better opportunity. Meanwhile, in an open field, Rina and her two followers were testing their newly awakened powers, summoning elemental magic, while Rina pondered the nature of divine protection. Kai had followed them and was watching from a bush when he suddenly felt a strange energy. At the same time, the girls heard something rustling nearby. A massive, lizard-like creature appeared, drawn in by the magic. Kai immediately checked its stats and was shocked by how powerful it was. The beast roared and lunged at the girls. Kai quickly noticed it was strong and aggressive, but not very smart. It only charged in straight lines. He hurled a knife that managed to pierce the creature's thick hide. As the girls fled, Rina tripped and fell. Just as the monster was about to stomp her, it froze. A knife was buried deep in its head, blood oozing out. The girls were confused but didn't wait around. They fled the scene. Kai hadn't planned to help them, but his conscience wouldn't let him walk away. He realized if such monsters were lurking freely, things weren't going to be easy. As he went to retrieve his knife from the beast's corpse, he suddenly felt a presence nearby. He hid behind a body, scanned the area, but saw nothing. Not wanting to risk it, he returned to his room quietly. After he left, a mysterious figure stepped out from behind a wall. His face hidden under a robe, the person crushed the monster's skull with bare hands, squeezing out its eyes. Disgusted, they muttered about how pathetic the hero candidates were, but noted that Kai smelled just like him. The next morning, Gauss brought the corpse of the monster to the hero candidates, leaving them stunned. He explained that the creature had been found dead near the royal capital the night before. Gauss revealed that the Demon King had driven monsters into a frenzy, making them crave human flesh. He warned the students that they'd be up against monsters like this. Turning to Steady, the group's researcher, Gauss asked if he noticed anything unusual. Steady replied that the creature bore traces of sorcery, likely cast by a mid-level or higher demon. He suspected the demons were scouting to evaluate the new hero candidates. Kai grew curious about the word sorcery, wondering how it differed from magic. Shuji asked if that meant the monster had been controlled. Steady explained that powerful demons could use servitude spells to control weaker monsters. Before Steady could go into more detail, Gauss dragged him away. Still, Kai thought Steady's insights could be useful and appreciated his help. That's when a realization struck him. Those eyes he had sensed the night before belonged to a demon. Whoever it was, they were good at hiding, and Kai suddenly felt like someone was watching him again. Meanwhile, Erisher told Gauss that killing the demon was the only way to return home, and he had no intention of staying in this world. The others agreed. Kai believed it was important for them to quickly understand the harsh truth. Just then, Leonora entered and reassured them, saying they only lacked proper training. Since they were from another world, their growth potential was different, and with time, they'd improve. A week later, the students were deep into their training. Kai, however, wasn't suited for battle due to his judgment-type ability, so he was allowed to study in the library. He'd already learned the new language and found it odd how easily they could all communicate. But books about the world's history, culture, or demons were scarce. Among the students, the top 5 were Narumi with wind control, Erisher with explosion powers, Kinzaki using telekinesis, Hashimoto with earth powers, and Rina with fire. Yet Shuji stood out the most. He advanced faster than even his instructors. Using his ability, Kai saw that all of Shuji's stats had jumped from below D grade to above B grade in just a week. Suddenly, 2 boys approached Kai and started mocking him. He noticed others were beginning to look down on him too, their new powers making them cocky. When one tried to push him around, Kai swiftly threw him to the ground without making a scene. Meanwhile, Leonora and Gauss arrived at the training grounds, and Leonora announced that since everyone had progressed faster than expected, they'd be accelerating their plans. When Narumi asked if they were being sent to face the Demon King, Leonora denied it, explaining that they'd now begin practical monster combat training instead. The announcement made everyone nervous. The next day, Gauss and Leonora led the hero candidates deep into a forest filled with obstacles. Since it was difficult to move as a large group, Gauss explained they'd be split into teams of 2 or 3. The candidates quickly formed their own teams, leaving Kai and Kinzaki with no choice but to pair up. Kai observed that she seemed confident, indifferent, and quite proud. She even caught him staring. Leonora then added that the team who defeated the most monsters would earn a surprise reward. With that, the drills began. On the way, Kinzaki told Kai she didn't need his help since her powers far surpassed everyone else's. She warned him not to get in her way. Kai agreed and said he'd stay out of it. She asked if he had no pride, but before he could answer, he sensed 4 hidden enemies. One monster charged, and Kinzaki used her ability, Domination, which allowed her to control her targets with commands. She ordered the goblin to bow, and it obeyed. But the power drained her, and she explained that prolonged use consumed a lot of mana. When Kai told her to just kill the goblin, she hesitated, saying it looked too human. Kai reminded her it was still a monster that had attacked them. He figured she was just a naive Japanese student who used a piece. As he toyed with a stone, the remaining 3 goblins appeared. Kinzaki again ordered them to bow and asked Kai to do something. He reminded her that she'd told him not to interfere. Frustrated, she commanded the goblins to twist their own necks, killing them instantly. Kai was stunned by the brutal effectiveness of her ability, and she explained that the more complex the command, the less likely it would work. Disgusted by the dead goblins, Kinzaki looked disturbed. Kai comforted her, offering calm reassurance. She asked how he could stay so composed without any powers, and he simply said that this was his strength. When he asked if she wanted to back out, she firmly refused, though he knew she was just trying to look tough. Still, he had to admit, she wasn't so bad. Meanwhile, Narumi and Hashimoto were desperately trying to escape from a monster that was way too powerful for them. But fleeing wasn't really an option, so they decided to fight back together. Combining their wind and rock powers, they hurled a massive boulder at the beast, but it barely left a mark. They were completely outmatched and had no clue what to do next. Kinzaki, on the other hand, was deep in thought. She didn't want to die before repaying her grandfather for raising her. She hadn't even shown him how much she'd grown. As she zoned out, Kai snapped her back to reality, asking if she wanted to keep going since they might get lost. The two exchanged playful jabs, and Kinzaki couldn't help but wonder why Kai was so mysterious and stubborn. Just as they were messing around, a loud cry echoed nearby. Kinzaki immediately recognized Hashimoto's voice. Kai asked what they should do, and Kinzaki said the answer was obvious. They had to help. Meanwhile, Hashimoto had been thrown several feet by the monster and was badly injured and bleeding. She begged Narumi to run, but it was too late. The monster was coming for him next. That's when Kinzaki stepped in, using her powers to stop the monster in its tracks, even if just temporarily. Narumi thanked her, but she warned that the monster was far too powerful to hold off for long. Kai asked if Hashimoto was still alive, and Narumi confirmed she was barely. Kai told him to carry her and get out while they could. Though reluctant, Narumi obeyed. Once they were gone, Kai used his abilities to check the monster's stats and was shocked by its high defense. His attacks wouldn't do much. He also realized it was a mutant and wasn't sure what kind exactly. Kinzaki yelled that she couldn't hold it back any longer. Kai told her she'd bought them enough time and that they needed to retreat too. She agreed but had collapsed, her energy completely drained. She couldn't even stand. Seeing how bad things were, Kai pulled out a smoke grenade and set it off. The cover gave him just enough time to scoop Kinzaki up and hide. She blushed a little, flustered from being carried. When she asked about the smoke, Kai said it was a grenade he'd made during training, which was a lie. He'd actually had some assassin gear with him before being summoned and was trying to use it sparingly. Feeling guilty, Kinzaki apologized since it was her idea to go save the others, and now she was the one being rescued. Kai told her not to apologize. She could just thank him again. Their usual banter continued until she suggested they run. But just then, they saw Shuji and the rest of the group arrive. Without hesitation, Shuji charged at the monster, furious that it had hurt his friends. He managed to injure its hand, and Rina followed up with her fire powers, which only slowed a little. The group launched into another attack, but they weren't alone. Watching from a distance was Delphi's, a veteran assassin demon. Smirking, he commented on how fast the hero candidates were growing. The armored brute couldn't take them down, and Delphi's admired Shuji's composure. What was meant to be a scouting mission was about to become something much more deadly. He had decided to eliminate them then and there. While Shuji and the others managed to defeat the monster, Delphi's watched with a grin and was just about to strike, until a dagger pressed against his neck stopped him cold. It was Kai. Caught off guard, Delphi's froze in shock, unable to comprehend how Kai had sneaked up behind him. He immediately began thinking of a way to escape. But before he could act, Kai slashed his legs and threw him to the ground, warning him to stay quiet so the others wouldn't notice. Kai told Delphis that if he answered a few questions, he might let him go. Though Delphis didn't want to comply, he had no choice. Kai clearly held the advantage. Kai asked if Delphis had been the one watching him the other night, revealing that he had deliberately let Shuji and the others fight the monster to draw the observer out. Delphis smirked and refused to talk, but Kai didn't hesitate. He slashed his hands and warned that cooperation would make things easier. Delphis snapped back, telling Kai not to underestimate him, then suddenly swallowed poison he had hidden, killing himself on the spot. Kai realized the Demon King's army wasn't going to be easy to deal with. Just then, Kenzaki showed up, surprised to see a corpse at Kai's feet. When Kai asked how long she had been watching, she said since the moment Delphis hit the ground. Kai explained that the dead man was an assassin from the Demon King's forces, and the monster they'd fought earlier had been his pawn, just like the first lizard monster. Kenzaki grew nervous, realizing that the Demon King was targeting hero candidates. She asked how Kai had seen through the assassin when no one else did. He figured it wasn't worth hiding anymore and told her the truth. His family came from a long line of assassins, and he could smell others in the same trade. Kenzaki was stunned by this revelation. Kai told her it was up to her whether to believe him or not, but asked her to keep quiet about the body, since the others were already shaken by Hashimoto's condition. She agreed, surprised to see how much Kai cared. He shrugged it off, saying it was just because the others weren't used to real battles yet. Meanwhile, all the hero candidates had gathered around Hashimoto, who was seriously wounded. A student named Hano, who possessed healing powers, knelt beside her and began treating her injuries. Everyone watched in awe as Hano confidently announced that Hashimoto would recover in about an hour. The group started praising Shuji for taking down the monster when suddenly Leonora and Gauss arrived. The others immediately questioned where they had been and why they hadn't helped. Gauss explained that he had been observing the entire time, but stepping in every time wouldn't help them grow. Shuji argued that the situation had been critical. Hashimoto could have died. Gauss simply replied that risking one's life was part of military training, and they had to get used to that level of danger. Shuji then asked how an armored monster had appeared in an area said to contain only weak creatures. Leonora chimed in, suggesting that the assassin's interference might have been the reason, since armored monsters weren't supposed to show up there. Gauss and Leonora decided they needed to tighten security, unaware that Kai had already eliminated the threat. Leonora also insisted that the students needed more intense training. At their current level, they'd never survive real combat. Her words left everyone uneasy, but when Shuji tried to reason with her, she firmly stated that the only way to stay alive was to get stronger. Erasure didn't like being bossed around, so he tried to confront Leonora. But before he could, Gauss stopped him and reminded everyone that they were merely pawns of Leonora. They had no right to defy her orders. The tension in the room was rising fast. Shuji stepped in, trying to calm Erasure down, pointing out that they really had no choice but to follow orders. Gauss, impressed by Shuji's composure, reassured them that as long as they behaved, nothing bad would happen. After all, they were valuable pawns to the country. Still, Erasure wasn't having it. In a burst of rage, he launched an explosive attack at Gauss. But Gauss dodged swiftly and retaliated with a brutal punch, knocking Erasure to the ground. He coldly remarked that they were all weak and warned them that things would only get harder from the next day. With that, he and Leonora walked away. Erasure stood up, face bleeding, and swore he'd kill Gauss the next day. The following day, Steady, the researcher in charge of their training, had a quick discussion with them about what happened. He then revealed that they would be fighting monsters at his research facility. Inside, all kinds of monsters were kept for his experiments. Soon, the training began, and the hero candidates were thrown into monster battles. Kai noticed that, surprisingly, everyone was calm despite being forced into this. Shuji told Steady that the monsters felt too strong for the candidates, but Steady responded that Leonora had ordered strict training. He had no intention of going easy on them. With powers like theirs, he said, they shouldn't be losing at all, and more importantly, their willpower was what mattered most. Shuji asked if that really made a difference. Steady replied that if they did it right, they could level up their abilities and even unlock new variations of their powers. Kai then joined the conversation, telling Shuji that his judgment power revealed that Shuji had awakened a new ability. Surprised, Shuji asked Steady if he could test it. Curious to see it in action, Steady agreed. Shuji activated his new power and, in one clean move, sliced off the monster's hand and head. Kai realized that Shuji wouldn't have trouble facing armored monsters anymore. He also started wondering if his own judgment powers had leveled up too. That's when he noticed someone else had awakened a new power, Erashur. But he chose not to tell him for now. Later that night, Erashur was secretly plotting to kill Gauss, tie up Leonora, and force her to reveal a way back to their real world. A few other candidates agreed with his plan, eager to escape this world too. Erashur asked Narumi to join them because they would have a better chance together, and he knew Narumi was also tired of that world. Narumi hesitated but eventually decided to join. The next day, Shuji was training when Kai approached him and complimented his hard work. Shuji replied that he was still weak and needed to improve. Kai told him that with his current strength, he could defeat half the knights in that world. Shuji said that wasn't enough since he still couldn't defeat Gauss and needed more power to protect everyone. Kai then asked Shuji what he thought of Leonora and Gauss. Shuji said he knew they were using the candidates as pawns in their battle, but believed they wouldn't harm them. Kai asked if that meant Shuji was willing to risk his life until the Demon King was defeated. Shuji agreed, saying he had made up his mind, but insisted he would be the only one to fight. He planned to become the country's hero, defeat the Demon King, and try to negotiate so everyone else could live safely. Kai asked if Leonora would allow that, and just then, Leonora and Gauss walked in. Leonora told Shuji he would be in charge of the candidates' training while she was away. Shuji gladly accepted his role. After Leonora and Gauss left, Gauss asked if she was sure she had made the right choice. She asked what made him doubt it. Gauss warned her not to play games and to be direct. He added that Erashur was stirring something up, and she agreed, saying it might be a rebellion against them. Gauss asked what her next move would be, and she said she was curious to see what Erashur and the others would do next. Gauss was a bit worried about the rebellion since the hero candidates had powers and could cause serious trouble. But Leonora remained calm, confident they could never defeat her. She said they should create a hierarchy to crush the rebellion and break their fangs once and for all. She also mentioned she noticed some other suspicious things, but decided to leave those aside for now. Later that night, Kai was fighting another monster. He killed it the same way he had taken down the one on the first night, fast and efficient. It only took him 13 seconds. When he used his judgment ability on himself afterward, he realized he had leveled up. But just then, another monster appeared. This one was tougher, and his blades couldn't pierce its body. It was the perfect moment to try out his new skill. He activated his ability, which allowed him to detect the enemy's weak spot. Once he found it, he killed the monster in the blink of an eye. The skill wasn't bad, but he knew it still wasn't enough to survive in that brutal world. He needed to become even stronger. More monsters came at him, but he took them down with ease. He needed something more challenging to truly test his power. That's when he heard human footsteps. It was Kinzaki. She asked what he was doing out there so late at night. Kai responded by asking what she was doing there instead. She told him she came looking for him since he wasn't in the dorm. He warned her that the forest was dangerous at night, especially for someone not used to nighttime battles. But she cut him off and asked what he was even doing out there. He told her he was testing a new power. When she asked what that power was, he started teasing her instead. She eventually admitted that she was worried about him. Embarrassed, she blushed and started coming up with excuses. As they were talking, they noticed smoke rising in the distance. Something was on fire. They rushed back and saw that the dorm was in flames. Other candidates were already fighting monsters. Narumi told them he was relieved to see they were safe. He said that when he woke up, the building was already burning and monsters had shown up. Kai suspected a human was behind it all and believed the culprit had to be nearby. He told them to find whoever was responsible. Just then, Steady appeared on top of a building and commended their judgment. Kai said he had been wondering how the monsters showed up, but now it made sense. They were all from Steady's lab. Steady revealed he had given them some kind of enhancement drug to boost their power, since they were originally too weak. Kai asked him what the point was. What did he gain by killing other candidates? Steady said it was a direct order from above. He had been told to eliminate the candidates, even if it meant sacrificing his current position. He claimed he had nothing personal against them, but still, he had to kill them. When they asked if Leonora was behind the order, he denied it, saying it wasn't that Vixen's command. The order had come from the Demon King himself. Steady was a spy working for the Demon King. If he succeeded, he'd be offered a position as a researcher in the Demon King's realm. Kai was stunned. Had Steady really fallen so far into darkness that all he cared about was experimenting on monsters? But Steady insisted that monsters were beyond human understanding. Then he ordered his monsters to attack. Kinzaki tried to stop them using her powers, but they broke through her spell in no time and went after her. Kai jumped in and saved her, which got Steady excited. He was impressed by Kai's strength. Kai continued the fight, cutting down nearly a dozen monsters. Steady was now furious, especially since Kai didn't even have an exceptionally strong ability. Kai then used his judgment power on Steady and saw that his stats were terrible. But something else stood out. Steady also possessed domination powers, just like Kinzaki, only much stronger. That explained why Kinzaki's magic hadn't worked earlier. Shaken, Steady was forced to use a power he hadn't wanted to reveal. He told Kai he'd find out what it was soon enough. As Kai leapt in to attack, determined not to waste a second, a massive red dragon suddenly appeared and blasted fire at him. It was Steady's trump card. The dragon began hurling huge boulders at them. Kai told Narumi to take Kinzaki and get out of there, as another attack was coming. Once again, Kai used his power to find the dragon's weak spot, which turned out to be its neck. He tried to strike it, but his attack power wasn't strong enough to land a fatal blow. Suddenly, Erishur showed up, attacked the dragon, and started bragging about how he could actually hurt it, but the dragon quickly counterattacked. Kai told Erishur they needed to work together to bring the beast down. Erishur questioned why Kai would need his help, and Kai explained that while he could detect the dragon's weak points, he didn't have the attack strength to take advantage of them. Still acting stubborn, Erishur insisted he didn't need help from a rookie like Kai. But there was no time to argue. The dragon attacked again, spewing fire at Erishur. That finally made Erishur agree to team up. Kai told him the weak spot was a single scale on the dragon's neck. They formed a quick plan. Kai would grab its attention, and Erishur would strike at the weak point. Meanwhile, Steady ordered the dragon to kill them. The dragon charged, and Kai successfully distracted it, while Erishur went for the target. The attack hit, bringing the dragon crashing to the ground, defeated. Kai turned to Steady and asked if he had anything else left, now that his trump card had failed. Steady replied that he did have other monsters, but unfortunately, Shuji and the rest had already taken care of them. As Steady tried to escape, Narumi caught him. Kai demanded answers, and the terrified Steady immediately agreed, too scared to resist. But just as he was about to reveal the truth, his body turned purple and he dropped dead. A curse had been placed on him, one that would kill him the moment he tried to leak any information. The next day, the candidates confronted Leonora when she returned, since she was the one who had left Steady in charge. She apologized and explained that she never expected a weak demon tamer like him to cause such chaos. The candidates were stunned to learn that she already knew Steady was a demon tamer. They questioned her. If she was aware of his identity, why did she let him stay so close to them? In her defense, she reminded them that she had already warned them their training would be tougher, and what happened was simply part of that. Gauss then blamed the group for not being cautious enough to notice a fire in the night. Leonora told them that next, they would all be heading to the royal capital for the public reveal of the hero candidates. A grand parade would be held there, and they would be the main highlight of the event. That evening, they set out for the capital, and by nightfall, they camped in a field. While eating, Erishur spoke to his followers, noting that there were only about 30 soldiers accompanying them, and they weren't very strong. He said it was time to put their plan into motion, as they had the numbers to overpower them. He then asked one of his men to call Narumi and his group over. Kai, who had overheard the conversation, agreed that the soldier count was low, but understood it was because Gauss and Leonora were confident they could handle any threat themselves. Kai went to Shuji and asked if they could talk later. That night, Erishur and Narumi met in a nearby forest, ready to ambush the soldiers. But Shuji and the other candidates showed up to block their path. Shuji revealed he had heard about Arashi's plan to assassinate Leonora and Gauss, leaving Erishur shocked that his plan had somehow been exposed. The others tried to reason with him, suggesting there had to be a better way than murder. Erishur snapped back, accusing Shuji of only talking and having no real plan. But Shuji said he was willing to become a pawn and defeat the Demon King in exchange for everyone's safety. Erishur rejected the offer and told him to move aside. But Shuji and the others refused to let him pass, and with no agreement possible, a fight broke out. Suddenly, 2 soldiers arrived and ordered them all to go to sleep, reminding them they had to travel early in the morning. Erishur, frustrated, walked off, saying he was done with weakness and saw no point in talking further. The next day, they all arrived at the royal capital, which was packed with people because of the upcoming ceremony. The streets buzzed with excitement as citizens caught glimpses of the hero candidates, clearly placing a great deal of faith in them. At the castle, they were warmly welcomed by Holy Knight Rhaenys, who suggested they rest first. The candidates were delighted by the royal hospitality. Fluffy beds, relaxing hot water baths, and delicious food were all laid out for them. Kai, however, had other plans. He wanted to gather more information, but the castle was crawling with guards. While looking around, he spotted Rhaenys, the knight who had been showing them around, talking to his soldiers. Rhaenys mentioned that the hero candidates were far stronger than other children their age. One soldier expressed concern that bringing the candidates into the capital might provoke the demons to make a move. Rhaenys reassured them, saying the candidates were strong enough to handle anything. Kai's curiosity only deepened, so he decided to sneak out into town at night. He stopped by a pub, ordered some ale and snacks, and listened in on conversations. People were talking about the hero candidates, surprised at how ordinary they looked. But what caught his attention most was how fearful everyone seemed, not of the king or nobles, but of the church. Kai asked the bartender for more information, pretending to be new in town. The bartender told him about the Demon King, who had been attacking the kingdom and could even seduce humans with overwhelming power. He also mentioned how the Demon King's followers had recently blown up a noble's estate. Kai left the pub deep in thought, realizing that bringing the candidates into the capital might not have been the smartest move. Suddenly, Kinzaki showed up, worried about him. He explained that he was just gathering information since they were in unfamiliar territory. She offered to help, but he initially refused, which irritated her. After a bit of back and forth, he finally agreed to let her help and asked her to gather information about the royal capital. They both went their separate ways to investigate, unaware that someone had been eavesdropping on their entire conversation. The man smirked as he watched her leave. Later, Kai returned to his room after a long, unfruitful search. He hadn't found anything crucial, but he did learn about the presence of a new enemy. Suddenly, he heard noises outside and found the other candidates gathered in the hall. That's when he learned that Kinzaki had gone missing. Since Kai didn't share a room with anyone, no one noticed his absence either. When questioned, he denied knowing anything. Shuji concluded that she must have left the castle, and with dawn approaching, they all split up to search for her. While searching, Kai spotted her student ID lying on the street. As soon as he picked it up, masked men ambushed him. But his reflexes were sharp. He quickly took down 3 of them. The fourth one, clearly an inexperienced spy, froze in fear. Kai stopped him and demanded to know who he was and what he knew. Meanwhile, in what appeared to be a castle, Kanzaki was tied up and being held captive. 2 spies were interrogating her, demanding information about the hero candidates, but she refused to say a word. When they realized she wasn't going to cooperate, one of them tore her shirt. What they didn't know, though, was that Kai had already infiltrated the place and was secretly watching everything. Using his judgment powers, he quickly assessed that the 2 spies were actually pretty weak. He couldn't believe someone like Kanzaki had been captured by such low-level enemies. Without wasting time, he killed them both. Kanzaki, now exposed, was embarrassed to see him. He freed her from the chains and was about to leave with her when he suddenly sensed someone rapidly approaching. It was Rhaenys, the Holy Knight. Without hesitation, Rhaenys launched an attack, but both Kai and Kanzaki managed to dodge it. With a smile, Rhaenys declared that he would have to kill them. Aside from being a Holy Knight, he was also the general of the Demon King's army. Kai commented on how the country was already on the brink of collapse, especially with enemies roaming freely even in the capital. He used his judgment ability again and realized that Rhaenys was an all-rounder and a powerful warrior. The 2 clashed, and Kai narrowly avoided Rhaenys' sword. But then, Rhaenys used fire magic, catching Kai off guard. He barely dodged the flaming attack, only for Rhaenys to coat his sword in fire and announce that it was over for Kai. But Kai quickly pulled out his gun and shot Rhaenys straight in the temple. Rhaenys collapsed and died instantly. Kai hadn't wanted to use his gun for something like that, especially since he only had limited bullets, but he had no other option. He realized that if he wanted to survive in this world, he had to get better at close combat. Kanzaki was shocked to see him with a gun and admitted it was scary knowing someone from their class had brought one. Kai explained that it was standard equipment for an assassin. She thanked him, and he asked why she hadn't used her domination powers. She replied that once her hands were chained, her powers were somehow disabled. As they prepared to leave, Kanzaki mentioned that those spies were planning to attack everyone in their class. But Kai already knew. He had interrogated a 4th man he captured earlier, and that guy revealed their orders to kill all the hero candidates. He was also the one who told Kai where Kanzaki was being held. The plan was to use her as a hostage during the attacks. What was truly strange, though, was that the man Kai had interrogated hadn't died from the death curse like Steady had. That meant it wasn't the work of a demon. It meant there were humans working against them. It was almost morning when Shuji found them, relieved to see her safe. Kai explained everything to him about the Demon King's cult, and how even humans had turned against humanity. The problem now was that they couldn't easily tell who their enemies were anymore. Unlike monsters, these were people, making it harder to identify threats. This meant they all had to be extra careful. They decided not to inform Leonora, knowing she'd just tell them to figure it out themselves. So instead, they planned to gather everyone and decide what to do next. But before they could, a strange smoke surrounded them, and cult members emerged from the fog. Everyone prepared to fight. Not just this group, but other candidate teams were ambushed too. Kai noticed there were 6 cult members, and although their stats were lower than Rhaenys, they were still formidable. As the 6 men charged at them, Kanzaki used her powers to freeze them in place, and Kai quickly finished them off by stabbing them in the head. Shuji felt uneasy. After all, they were still human. He started to argue, but Kai cut him off, reminding him that enemies were enemies, no matter what. Just then, one last cult member lunged at Shuji. He tried to reason with him, but the man said he was simply following his master's will. Kanzaki got ready to act again, but Kai stopped her. He wanted Shuji to handle it. Shuji broke the man's sword and gave him a chance to surrender, but the cultist refused and struck Shuji, wounding his hand. In retaliation, Shuji slashed him back. As the man whimpered on the ground, Shuji hesitated, wanting to leave him to die slowly. But Kai insisted. He had to kill him right there, or the man could become a future threat. Reluctantly, Shuji did what he was told. Meanwhile, Erishur and his squad also defeated their enemies. Erishur killed the last one without mercy. Rina and the other girls were struggling. They found it hard to kill humans, and aside from Rina, most of them were getting hurt. Suddenly, Leonora appeared and casually asked if she should consider giving them a passing grade. The cultists grew furious at the sight of her. She coolly said that since they were candidates, it was only natural she'd appear to help when they were in danger. One of the cultists mocked her, saying she didn't even have her knight with her, so how could she protect anyone? But Leonora just smirked, calling them nothing but weaklings manipulated by the Demon King. She didn't even see them as worthy enemies. When all the cultists rushed at her, she used her domination skill to pin them to the ground. They couldn't move a muscle. Rina, surprised, noted that Leonora's ability resembled Kanzaki's, but Leonora quickly corrected her, saying her domination was far superior in every way, be it range or power. Rina asked why she'd saved them, and Leonora replied that she'd already mentioned giving them a passing grade. They all thanked her for stepping in. One of the cultists, still alive, clutched at her dress, begging not to be ignored and asking for mercy. She looked down and calmly apologized for the fact that he was still breathing. Then, she used her domination on all the candidates and commanded them to kill the restrained cultists. Their bodies moved against their will, and they were forced to slaughter the cultists, proof of just how terrifying Leonora's power truly was. Kai and Kanzaki were observing everything unfold from distance. Kanzaki was stunned by how Leonora could control so many people at once. Her range and power were on an entirely different level. 12 hours after the attack, all the candidates regrouped in the hall. Many of them were in rough shape and visibly shaken. Narumi declared that he wouldn't forgive Leonora for forcing the candidates to kill against their will. Shuji blamed himself for not arriving in time, but Kai told him it wouldn't have changed anything. None of them were strong enough to resist Leonora anyway. Kai was certain that with the demon army's general defeated, their enemies wouldn't be able to act for some time. He then asked Kanzaki to come with him. When she asked why, he said he needed help from someone with powers similar to Leonora's to find a way to counter her domination magic. Then he asked her to use her powers on him. Hearing that, Kanzaki turned red and flustered. The day after they fended off the cult members, the kingdom held a grand parade to celebrate the summoning of the hero candidate Kates. It was recognition of the candidates' strength, shown during their battle with the Demon King's cult. The citizens of the royal capital welcomed them warmly. Later, when the candidates gathered again, Leonora said she wanted them to return to Temple City Alpha. Kai explained that it was the city they were originally summoned to, and suspected it was under Leonora's control. Shuji asked if Leonora would be coming along, but she said she had other matters to handle and would leave them under Gauss's care. Rina expressed a desire to return, but pointed out that their dorms had been burned down. She also noticed one girl looking pale and too terrified of Leonora to even speak. Leonora left with a smug grin, and the candidates were left harboring resentment toward her. Soon after, Gauss led them toward their next destination. That night, they made camp, and Erasure along with the others went into the forest again. Kinzaki asked Kai if they were really going through with it that night. He confirmed they were. Leonora wasn't around, and the soldiers were just weaklings. It was the perfect opportunity to kill Gauss, and under those conditions, Kai had no reason to stop them. In fact, he was just planning to sit back and enjoy the show. Meanwhile, Narumi had lured Gauss deep into the forest, claiming he had seen a giant monster. Gauss fell for it since the path led to the royal capital, and a monster near that area would have been a serious threat. But suddenly, Erasure ambushed him from behind with full force. Caught off guard, Gauss took the hit and started bleeding. Erasure mocked him, saying that even Gauss's strongest attack couldn't kill him. Barely able to stay on his feet, Gauss accidentally stepped on a landmine, which exploded. Erasure grinned and revealed it had all been a trap set for him. Gauss used his mana to shield himself, but the explosion still left him badly wounded. Disappointed, Gauss told Erasure he didn't expect such a sneaky attack from him. Just then, the rest of Arashi's group surrounded Gauss. Realizing how serious things had gotten, Gauss threw a glowing orb into the sky. It worked like a firework signal. From a distance, Kinzaki and Kai spotted it. Kai commented that Erasure had gone too far. The signal was actually a distress call, which nearby soldiers noticed and started moving in that direction, but Kai intercepted them and killed them all before they could reach. Back in the forest, Gauss was getting overwhelmed by the candidates. He struggled to keep up with their power and was eventually pushed to the limit, losing one of his arms and bleeding all over. Erasure, somewhat impressed, said Gauss was tough for his age. Narumi then mentioned the distress signal, saying he was just trying to buy some time. But Gauss calmly said it was no longer needed. That's when Leonora appeared, smiling as usual, noting how Gauss had been cornered. The candidates were shocked by her sudden entrance. At the same time, Shuji, Rina, and other candidates spotted Kanzaki using her domination ability to restrain some soldiers. She claimed she was only following orders, but they didn't believe her. Kanzaki wasn't someone who took orders from others. Then Kai showed up and clarified that she had been following his orders. Shuji was stunned to hear that Kai had killed the soldiers. Kai explained that since Erasure was busy fighting Gauss, he took it upon himself to handle the guards. That's when Shuji and the others started piecing everything together. Shuji asked if Kai had teamed up with Erasure, but Kai said he was simply doing whatever he wanted. He also told Shuji to stop bothering him and go after Erasure instead. Shuji and the others left to find Erasure and his group. Meanwhile, Leonora looked at Gauss and said he was clearly losing. Gauss admitted it. He just couldn't fight off old age anymore. Erasure declared that after everything that had happened, he wasn't going to back down like a coward. One of the candidates questioned Leonora, asking if she was the one controlling everyone. Leonora replied that while she did have control, there were other conditions involved. If someone had a large mana pool and strong resistance, her control wouldn't work as well. But those who always depended on their powers and never trained to control their mana were easy targets. Erasure called her a coward and dared her to face them directly. Leonora just smiled and said she would handle them herself and promised to break his fangs. Erasure lunged at Leonora, but she quickly summoned a massive boulder and sent him flying. Then, using her control over fire, water, and air, she easily took down the other candidates. Narumi flew in, grabbed Erasure, and took off into the sky. Suddenly, Shuji and the other candidates arrived. Shuji asked Erasure to stop and questioned what he hoped to gain from this. Erasure challenged him to stop him by force if he disagreed, saying he hated Shuji's pacifist ways. Shuji turned to the others, asking if they felt the same. Rina stepped forward, saying she supported Erasure. Leonora laughed, pointing out they were still bickering among themselves. She added that at this point, they were basically starting a rebellion and questioned whether they thought she'd forgive them even if they stopped now. Without warning, she summoned a massive cyclone, injuring everyone. Shuji tensed at the sight of his wounded comrades, but Erasure told him to calm down and said that if he truly wanted to protect them, he had to make up his mind. Otherwise, they'd all die. Realizing he had no choice, Shuji prepared to fight, joined by Rina and the others. Leonora warned them she would show them the gap between their strength and hers. Not far away, Kinzaki asked Kai what they should do. Kai replied that once Leonora used her magic to enslave the others, he'd step in. Until then, they needed to trust the candidates. Back in the fight, the candidates stood ready. Gauss managed to get back on his feet and declared that although he was weak, he still wanted to fight for Leonora. In response, she healed him completely, making him even stronger than before. The candidates were shocked. After all their effort, Gauss was back again. Rena pointed out that their numbers had grown too, so they could still fight. Leonora invited them to attack whenever they liked, saying this battle would be their test. If they couldn't beat her, then they were unworthy of being heroes. The fight began. Gauss noticed how hard it was to fight Shuji, especially with his magic sword. Leonora launched a water magic attack at Shuji, and although Rena managed to nullify it, Shuji still got injured. They tried attacking Leonora, but none of their moves landed. Meanwhile, Kai watched from the shadows and used his judgment skill to analyze Leonora's stats. He realized that while her magic was powerful, her defense was lacking. One strong physical blow might be enough. But Gauss stood in their way. Erasure told Shuji to leave Gauss to him and go after Leonora. Shuji hesitated. His magic couldn't harm her either. Just then, one of the candidates handed him a steel sword. Leonora remarked that now, he finally looked ready to fight. The other candidates couldn't help Shuji, as their powers had no effect on Leonora. They couldn't help Erasure either, since he was locked in close combat. Erasure could match Gauss blow for blow. Though Gauss was fully healed, his stamina hadn't fully recovered. Still, Erasure couldn't use his explosive power either, so the fight remained evenly matched. Leonora kept Shuji at bay with her ranged attacks, making it impossible for him to get close and use his sword. There had to be some way he could reach her and win, but he hadn't figured it out yet. Leonora smiled, saying she wasn't surprised. Only a few people in the entire country could dodge her attacks like that. Still, the fight was clearly one-sided. Since Shuji couldn't close the distance, he couldn't rely on help from the other candidates either. Then, Shuji suddenly charged at her at full speed, pushing through her wind attacks. She switched to using ground and fire magic, but he evaded those too. That's when she realized he was unconsciously using magic as a form of armor. The fact that he was growing this fast unsettled her a little. Still, she managed to fling him away using her powers. Elsewhere, Erasure had lost the ability to use his powers and was struggling to figure out how to defeat Gauss. Gauss slashed him in the abdomen with one swift move. Erasure was furious at himself for not being able to overcome an old man. Dropping to his knees, he listened as Gauss told him that this was the limit of what he could achieve without his powers. But Erasure, refusing to accept defeat, shouted that he was meant to be strong, and then landed a punch so powerful it sent Gauss crashing to the ground, bleeding. He had won. Back with Shuji, he reminded himself that if he didn't win, his friends would suffer. He stood up, and a dangerous aura began to surround him. Leonora noticed his incredible stamina, but remained calm, confident that he still couldn't get close to her. She was wrong. In the blink of an eye, Shuji was right in front of her, managing to slash her hand. She couldn't believe it, but she had no time to react. He was already behind her. Desperate, she used water magic to push him away. That's when she realized he had somehow acquired instant movement abilities. Before she could fully process it, he appeared again, just inches away from slicing her neck. In a last-ditch effort, she suddenly ordered him to kneel, and he froze in place. Smiling, she admitted she hadn't wanted to use this power, but he had left her no choice. Kai realized she had finally used her trump card and told Kinzaki to step back. Leonora smirked and said she hadn't planned to use enslaving magic, but Shuji had forced her hand. Now, he lay immobilized at her feet like a lifeless statue. The other candidates rushed in to help Shuji, but Leonora commanded them to stop, and they all froze mid-step. She told them they had done well and that she would pass them. She added that while she hadn't expected Gauss to lose, he was just a knight and easily replaceable. As long as she had control over everyone, it didn't matter. The candidates were beginning to lose hope, and without any countermeasures, defeat was inevitable. She explained to them that the reason she had been allowed to summon the candidates in the first place was so that, when the time came, she could control them freely, otherwise they might turn into threats. Suddenly, 3 knives flew at her from behind, but she easily dodged them. She calmly stated that she knew someone had been hiding the whole time. It was Kai. Kai admitted he was surprised she even noticed someone as unremarkable as him. She responded that she had found something odd about him from the very beginning. She expressed disappointment, saying she hadn't expected him to show up in such a hopeless battle. Then, she ordered him not to move, and just like that, he was caught in her spell. As she began explaining how her magic worked, a bullet struck her shoulder out of nowhere. She was stunned that he could still move and fired despite being under her spell. She asked him how he was resisting, certain her magic had been cast successfully. But before she could process it, he fired again, hitting her in the abdomen. She couldn't understand the weapon. Guns didn't exist in her world, and her defenses couldn't keep up. Kai then explained what a gun was and mentioned that he had limited bullets and didn't want to waste them. She retaliated with fire magic, but only his robe was singed. He was no longer there. The next moment, he was right behind her, gun pointed at her head. He said he knew she was weak in close combat, and her mind-controlling magic didn't work on him either. She was stunned and in denial. Kai had taken a huge risk and won. The reason was Kanzaki. That night, Kai had asked Kanzaki to dominate him with her skill. He had learned that the first skill cast took priority over any new spells. So, if Leonora tried to use her enslavement spell after Kanzaki's, it would fail. And since candidates had divine protection, their abilities were stronger than normal magic. Kanzaki had hesitated, worried her skill might be weaker than Leonora's magic. But the same principle had worked for Steady. Because he had cast a spell before Leonora did, he regained control over his monsters. It had been a gamble, but they had no better option. Back in the present, Leonora figured it must have been Kanzaki's doing, and she was right. Kai, still under Kanzaki's spell, told Leonora it was over and aimed his gun. She was captured and handcuffed. These cuffs sealed her magic, and they were the same ones used on Kanzaki earlier. Leonora asked what Kai planned to do with her. His condition was simple. Send them back, and he'd let her go. But she apologized, saying it wasn't possible. She could only summon people with magic, not send them back. Kai believed her. She truly didn't have that ability. He asked how they were supposed to return after defeating the Demon King. She explained that summoning required an enormous amount of energy, and it was their god who had summoned them. So once the Demon King was defeated, the god would supposedly send them back. However, she didn't seem confident. No previous candidates had ever returned. They'd been killed by the Demon King. There might have been survivors, but they eventually disappeared. After this short exchange, Kai was ready to kill her, but Shuji stopped him. Shuji said he had only been cooperating because he believed Leonora could send him home. Since that wasn't the case, he wanted to keep his status as a hero candidate. He didn't want to be labeled a traitor. Kai asked if they weren't already considered traitors. Leonora promised to pretend none of this had happened. Shuji pointed out that killing a saintess carried a heavy punishment. They could all get into serious trouble. The other candidates agreed with him. Kanzaki, however, remained on Kai's side. Shuji admitted that killing Leonora might be the logical choice, but asked, what would they do after that? Kai understood Shuji's reasoning. But in a shocking turn, he shot Leonora right between the eyes. Her body dropped to the ground. He then used a smoke grenade and vanished. The other candidates were left stunned and unhappy with his actions. Kanzaki thought back and realized it had all gone just as Kai had planned with her from the beginning. A few hours ago, when Kai and Kanzaki were discussing their plan, he told her their first goal was to capture Leonora and find a way back home. But if returning wasn't possible, he would kill her. He understood that if they captured her and couldn't return, Shuji would try to protect her. And when that happened, Kai would kill her and escape. He was ready to shoulder the sin of killing the saintess alone. That's why he had intentionally left a few of her guard alive, so they could place the blame entirely on him. He told Kanzaki to let everyone blame him and return to the Empire. She wasn't sure she could go through with it, but he reassured her that she could, even suggesting she use her powers during negotiations to make things work. When she asked where he'd go after escaping, he told her not to worry about him. Meanwhile, in a dark and distant castle, a man was reporting his failed attempt to kill the hero candidates to the Demon King. But the Demon King wasn't concerned. He believed the heroes would eventually appear on the front lines. The game was getting interesting, and he was enjoying it. 2 days after that incident, Kai was living in the forest. He was near a city that would take about half a day to reach on foot. Since he would never be allowed inside after killing the saintess, he planned to sneak in at night. He needed money. Inside the city, he found a tavern with a warm and lively atmosphere. Someone asked where he was from, and he lied, saying he came from a nearby town and was now looking for work. The man suggested he become an adventurer. He'd get jobs from the guild and earn money. He also mentioned that the guild was desperate for new adventurers and wouldn't even ask for identification. Kai stayed in an inn, relieved that no one recognized him. The next day, he went to the town's guild. It was full of all kinds of people. At the reception counter, he registered using the fake name Siren, the same code name he used in the real world. He claimed his town was destroyed by the Demon King's army. The receptionist explained the guild system. Ranks went from F to A, with higher ranks earning better rewards. As a newcomer, he was registered as an F-rank adventurer. He walked over to the bulletin board to choose his first task. That's when 3 guys came over to mess with him. They mocked him, and though he didn't like it, he kept calm. In the last scene, we saw those adventurers surrounding Kai, warning him not to take the quest. Kai calmly turned around, thanked them for the warning, and asked them to leave him alone. That annoyed them. They thought he was being arrogant. Onlookers whispered that those bullies were at it again with a newbie. One of them lunged at Kai, claiming he needed to be taught a lesson. But Kai effortlessly stopped the attack by grabbing the guy's arm. Shocked, the attacker yelled for him to let go, and Kai calmly did. He didn't want to fight. Still, the guy told his friends to attack together. But even then, Kai easily overpowered all of them and walked out of the guild. As he left, Kai thought to himself that now he had a clear idea of the average adventurer's level, and compared to hero candidates, they were embarrassingly weak. So he decided to complete the quest as fast as possible. The scene then shifted to the forest, where Erigi Kai was thinking that, based on the quest details, the kobolds should be nearby. Suddenly, he spotted some animal-like footprints on the ground. Erigi Kai began following them, and as he moved further in, he sensed the presence of others nearby, and not just one. He also realized that these mysterious creatures were quite skilled at hiding, which made him suspect that they were indeed kobolds. Out of nowhere, a kobold launched a surprise attack from behind, but Erigi Kai sensed it in time and easily dodged. He also noticed that the kobold was holding a human sword, implying it had likely defeated an adventurer before. As he was processing this, another kobold appeared from behind and tried to attack. This time, Erigi Kai dodged again, grabbed some dust from the ground, and threw it into the kobold's eyes to blind it. While the second kobold was struggling to see, Erigi Kai quickly landed a punch on the first kobold's face, knocking it down. He then grabbed its sword and finished it off without hesitation. Seeing this, the second kobold froze in shock, but before it could react, Erigi Kai swiftly struck it down with his knife too. Afterward, Erigi Kai used his judgment skill to assess the kobold's stats and realized they weren't a threat to him at all. Feeling confident, he thought it would be easy to hunt them for extra money. Soon, the scene shifted back to the guild, where everyone stared at Erigi Kai in disbelief. He had brought back the kobold's ears as proof of completing the subjugation. He asked Mia, the receptionist, if this would be enough, and she confirmed it was. She then asked if he had really handled it all by himself. Erigi Kai calmly said yes, explaining that while fighting kobolds was easy, the real challenge had been tracking them down. He reflected on how, although his combat skills were fine, his exploration abilities still needed work. Seeing him return after defeating the kobolds left everyone stunned, and they wondered if hunting kobolds was really that easy. Some even speculated that Erigi Kai might secretly be a C-rank hunter from another area. However, another person pointed out that they'd heard Erigi Kai was still a newbie. Mia then cut in, asking Erigi Kai to wait while she went inside to prepare his reward. The scene then shifted to nighttime, showing Erigi Kai walking somewhere while counting his money. He thought to himself how surprising it was to earn so much just by hunting weak magic beasts. Realizing that securing enough funds for daily living was more important for now, he decided to stay in the city and work as an adventurer. Erigi Kai figured that building connections around the guild would make it easier for him to gather information. Suddenly, someone appeared in front of him. Seeing the boy, Erigi Kai casually asked if he had any business with him, noting that the boy seemed much stronger than those he had encountered earlier at the guild. The boy introduced himself as Lyle, a B-rank adventurer and the one in charge of the city's guild branch. Erigi Kai responded indifferently with a "so what?" Lyle then asked if Erigi Kai was the one who had caused trouble with his men at the guild earlier that day. Erigi Kai calmly replied that those guys had started the fight first. In response, Lyle shouted angrily, accusing Erigi Kai of lying, saying he had heard that some unknown newbie had beaten up his men. Erigi Kai admitted that yes, he was indeed the one who did it. Hearing this, Lyle shouted that he wouldn't hesitate to teach Erigi Kai a lesson. He then tried to punch Eriji Kai several times, but to his frustration, Eriji Kai easily dodged all of his attacks. Eventually, Eriji Kai got bored, and with a swift leg sweep, he tripped Lyle, making him fall to the ground. Stunned, Lyle exclaimed in shock. Eriji Kai calmly commented that although Lyle had good speed, his moves were too rough and left too many openings. Hearing this, Lyle became even more furious and attacked again, demanding to know what Eriji Kai meant by that. But once again, Eriji Kai blocked his strike by grabbing his hand and quickly slammed him to the ground. Eriji Kai explained that he believed Lyle wasn't used to fighting humans since most of his quests likely involved magical beasts. In anger, Lyle asked why Eriji Kai had attacked his men when he had such overwhelming strength. Eriji Kai replied that he had already said it was just a misunderstanding and offered to explain everything from the start. Later, the scene shifted to the guild, where Lyle apologized to Eriji Kai, admitting it was his mistake. He even scolded and punished his men for lying to him, acknowledging that he was at fault for believing them too easily. He shouted at his men, demanding they apologize to Eriji Kai. Reluctantly, they apologized after Lyle's insistence. Eriji Kai replied that he didn't mind as long as the misunderstanding was cleared up. Eriji Kai then mentioned that he had a question. Lyle apologized again and assured him that he would answer anything. Eriji Kai explained that he was a traveler and had registered as an adventurer to earn money for his journey. He then revealed that there was another reason he became an adventurer. Curious, Lyle asked what it was, considering Eriji Kai's immense strength and mysterious background. Eriji Kai replied that he was searching for a way to travel to another world. Hearing this, Lyle and his men were stunned and asked him to explain further, wondering if such a thing was even possible. One of them mentioned hearing stories about hero candidates coming from other worlds. Eriji Kai confirmed that he was indeed talking about finding a method to enter the world of those hero candidates. Lyle responded, guessing that such a method likely involved magic, but admitted that neither he nor his men knew much about it. Eriji Kai agreed, knowing that such information wouldn't be easy to find, but he hoped Lyle's group might have some clue. Lyle then said there might be only one person who could help, someone called the sage Albanacarrot. Confused, Eriji Kai asked who Albanacarrot was. Lyle was surprised by his lack of knowledge and explained that Albanacarrot was an elf whose advice had greatly benefited the country. Upon hearing this, Eriji Kai recalled hearing about that name somewhere before. He remembered reading in books about an elven sage and explained that elves were rare beings, often believed to exist only in legends, living deep within forests and rarely venturing outside. Eriji Kai concluded that an elf who had left their forest and gained great wisdom was naturally known as a sage. Lyle mentioned that he had heard Albanacarrot had been alive for over a century and was widely known for great wisdom and vast knowledge. He also said Albanacarrot was a famous spellcaster with deep expertise in magic. Hearing this, Eriji Kai began to wonder if elves were naturally gifted with strong spiritual connections that helped them excel in magic. He also thought that even if there wasn't a specific spell to return heroes to their original world, perhaps magic could still make it possible. Suddenly, Lyle's subordinate, Raka, interrupted, asking whether the sage Albanacarrot was still alive, saying he had never heard of this person and that no one had ever seen them. Lyle just laughed and admitted that he didn't have any information about that. He then apologized to Eriji Kai for not being able to provide any helpful details. However, Eriji Kai assured him that the information was still useful to him. Eriji Kai then mentioned it was getting late and that he would head back to the inn. Hearing this, Lyle curiously asked what Eriji Kai planned to do once he found a way to travel to another world. Eriji Kai simply smiled and gave a vague answer, telling them to use their imagination. Confused, they watched as Eriji Kai left for the inn. A week later, the scene shifted to the guild, where Mia handed Eriji Kai his reward for completing the quest. After receiving the reward and stepping outside, Eriji Kai reflected on how a week had already passed since his conversation with Lyle and his group. During that time, he had saved up some money. Suddenly, Lyle and Raka approached him, asking if he had completed his quest and suggesting they go for drinks together. However, Eriji Kai, with a strange and somewhat distant look, declined their invitation. Seeing this, Lyle commented that Eriji Kai was really boring, and they left after saying goodbye. As he walked down the street, Eriji Kai thought about how he had finally gathered some information about the sage. He had learned that the sage's name was Elbana, who had served as the country's advisor about 10 years ago, but was now retired and living near the western border, the very place where the nation was currently fighting against the Demon King's army. Kai then decided there was no reason for him to stay in the city any longer and resolved to visit the so-called sage Elbana. The scene then shifted to the holy Temple City Alpha, where the hero candidates were having a meeting with someone. Heinrich, the captain of the Holy Knight Order's 8th Knight Corps, mentioned that it had been a month since he took on the responsibility of overseeing the hero candidates, replacing the duties of the fallen saintess. Heinrich then asked Midashuji if he had any complaints so far. Midashuji replied that he had none, indicating everything was fine since Heinrich was handling things well. Heinrich seemed pleased upon hearing that, saying the hero candidates were valuable assets to the nation, and he treated them with the respect they deserved. Hashimoto thanked Heinrich for his concern, but couldn't help noticing how different he was from Leonora. Still, she sensed there was something suspicious about the situation. Heinrich then shifted the discussion back to the main topic, mentioning that in the previous day's meeting, it was decided to mobilize the hero candidates. Midashuji was surprised and asked if he was right in understanding that they were being sent to the front lines. Heinrich confirmed it, explaining that battles were still raging on the western border. He then showed them a map, pointing out the fort where they would be deployed. Midashuji acknowledged it and was about to ask about the earlier promise, but Heinrich interrupted, assuring that he would keep his word to protect those unfit for battle. Midashuji gratefully thanked Heinrich for his reassurance. Heinrich went on to explain that they would be assigned tasks in the meantime, stressing that everyone needed to contribute and prove their worth. Midashuji agreed, recognizing the practical benefit of working. Hashimoto then asked when they were expected to leave. Heinrich responded urgently, suggesting they depart the next morning. He also asked Midashuji to inform everyone and ensure they were ready for the trip. After the meeting, as Midashuji and Hashimoto walked back, Hashimoto expressed relief that Heinrich had agreed to their request. Midashuji admitted he had been worried that their demands might have been too much, but was glad things worked out. Hashimoto speculated that the knights probably lacked confidence in handling the hero candidates without Leonora, which might explain their more humble attitude. Midashuji agreed, noting that Leonora's absence would make the knights more cautious. Hashimoto then wondered about Kai, curious about where he had gone and what he was doing now. The scene then shifted to the past, back to when Leonora was killed and Kai left the hero candidates. The bishop, visibly tense, questioned who could have killed Leonora. Nagase Rina answered, revealing that the culprit was Kai, who had been one of the hero candidates. The bishop and his guards were shocked at this revelation. The bishop quickly asked about Kai's current location. Nagase Rina responded that Kai had escaped, remarking on how fast he was for a traitor. The guards started discussing among themselves, debating whether they should immediately send an inquisitor if Kai's betrayal was confirmed, or first verify if Saintess Leonora was truly dead. Erasure Shinsuke angrily asked the bishop to clarify his words. The bishop explained that he wasn't directly denying their claim, but suggested there was a possibility that all the hero candidates had plotted together to eliminate Leonora. At that moment, Midashuji grew tense. Suddenly, Leonora's knight stepped forward and stated that he had witnessed the incident himself. He revealed that Midashuji and the others had indeed tried to protect the Saintess, but were ultimately overpowered by Kai, which led to Leonora's death. Another knight confirmed the same account, leading the bishop to say that he was inclined to believe the story since her own knights were verifying it. The bishop then asked about Kai's power, wondering if he was truly that strong. Midashuji confirmed it, explaining that Kai had been hiding his true strength all along. The bishop then invited them to continue the discussion privately in his chamber and requested that one of the hero candidates accompany him. Meanwhile, unknown to them, Kanzaki was secretly eavesdropping behind a wall, using her abilities to spy on the knights. Midashuji felt relieved that they had successfully managed the situation, thanks to Kanzaki's help. The scene shifted back to the present, where Hashimoto asked Midashuji if he was still concerned about Kai, suggesting that worrying about him was pointless. Midashuji gave a slight smile and agreed on the surface, but deep down, he admitted to himself that he was still bothered. He couldn't ignore the fact that Kai had sacrificed himself for their sake. Midashuji felt tense, having vowed to protect everyone. Yet Kai had taken that burden upon himself, leaving Shuji feeling helpless and unable to do anything for him. Later, inside the room, Shuji gathered everyone and announced that they had received orders to mobilize to the front lines. He instructed all combat-ready personnel to prepare for departure by the next morning. Some of the boys grew nervous as the weight of facing an actual battle hit them. Nagase Rina walked up and bluntly remarked that it was too late to be scared now, reminding them that they had willingly chosen to join the combat group. Hano Shirori then asked whether they were the only ones being sent to the front lines. Shuji replied that they would be going along with the 8th Night Corps under the command of Captain Hainer. Kinzaki then asked Shuji if there had been any news about Eiji Kai. Shuji explained that the temple had placed a bounty on Eiji Kai's head and had sent a large number of personnel to hunt him down. However, there had been no updates regarding his location. Hearing this, Kinzaki looked visibly upset. Shuji was about to offer some comfort, but before he could, Nagase Rina suddenly shouted in anger that she didn't care if Eiji Kai was a traitor or not. If she ever saw him, she'd burn him to ashes. Kinzaki, overwhelmed with sadness, wondered why Eiji Kai hadn't taken her with him. Then, the scene shifted to the jungle, where all the hero candidates, knights, and guards were traveling together. As they ventured deeper, Erishur suddenly sensed something and stopped. At the same time, Hano Shirori complained loudly, saying she was tired and asked if they could rest. Hashimoto responded firmly that they had just taken a lunch break, so resting again wasn't an option. It looked like they would be marching until nightfall. Some of the boys began to whisper, wondering if anything would ever happen since they had been walking for 2 days without incident. Suddenly, Erishur ordered everyone a halt. The others asked if something was wrong, and Erishur replied that he could sense the presence of a magical beast lurking behind the bushes. A knight soon arrived and angrily yelled at the hero candidates for stopping without permission. Shuji explained that they had detected a magical beast nearby. The knight, dismissive, barked that he couldn't see anything and reminded them that they had to follow his orders since they couldn't act without his approval. Hearing this, Erishur lost his temper, grabbed the knight by the neck, and demanded to know what he just said. The knight, clearly terrified, nervously asked what Erishur was doing, and even Shuji tried to calm Erishur down, urging him to stop. But Erishur, furious, shouted back, questioning why he should follow orders from a useless knight. Suddenly, a creature attacked Erishur, forcing him to let go of the knight and dodge quickly. It was a magical beast with the face of a rabbit, but armed with deadly, weapon-like hands. The guards grew alarmed and shouted that it was a sharp rabbit, urging everyone to prepare for battle. But before they could even react, the sharp rabbits charged at them, easily knocking their swords away. One sharp rabbit then glared menacingly at a guard and prepared to strike. But before it could, a powerful flame appeared out of nowhere and incinerated the beast. It was Erishur who had unleashed his power to defeat the creature. The guard thanked Erishur for saving him, but Erishur coldly told him to step aside and not get in his way. Without hesitation, Erishur continued to wipe out the sharp rabbits one after another with ease. Some of the students watched in awe, amazed by how destructive his power had become, far beyond what they had seen from him before. However, despite his overwhelming strength, Erishur remained unsatisfied, feeling that his power still wasn't enough to match Eiji Kai's. The scene then moved to a moment where Eiji Kai pointed a gun at Leonora. Seeing this, Erishur grew furious at Eiji Kai once again. In truth, Erishur felt frustrated because right from the start, Eiji Kai had shown no fear towards him, proving that Eiji Kai was clearly stronger. Eiji Kai's calm and indifferent reaction only confirmed this belief in Arashi's mind. Erishur then admitted that although he had gained explosive power and believed himself to be stronger, it irritated him to realize that Eiji Kai was still more powerful. Then, the scene shifted back to the present where Shuji interrupted Arashi's thoughts, asking why he looked so annoyed. Erishur simply replied that it was nothing, though he admitted he didn't like being ordered around by someone he considered useless. Sometime later, the scene switched to the western border of the Daguerreist Holy Kingdom, at Fort Truss. There, Captain Amelia of the Holy Knights introduced herself as the leader of the Station Night Order. Heinrich then asked Amelia what had happened to the watchdog captain. Amelia replied that the captain had died about a week ago. This news slightly shocked the hero candidates. Amelia then said she wanted to let them rest after their long journey. But before she could finish speaking, the guards suddenly shouted that the Demon King's army was approaching to attack. Amelia, smiling brightly, remarked that since everyone had heard the news, there was no time for rest and that she was counting on them. Shuji agreed and told the hero candidates to get ready for battle. Erasure looked extremely determined and prepared to face the upcoming fight. The guards rang the alarm bell, shouting that the demon army was approaching. The large number of monsters left Max stunned, making him wonder why there were so many of them. Heinrich ordered the guards to start firing immediately and reduce the enemy numbers before they got too close. The guards began shooting arrows, and the fire magic knights hurled fireballs at the monsters. However, even after being hit by arrows and fireballs, the monsters kept advancing, shouting about their desire to wipe out the humans. Midashuji was shocked to see that the monsters were still pushing forward despite the heavy attacks. Amelia calmly explained that these monsters wouldn't go down so easily and warned the hero candidates not to underestimate the monsters' stamina and toughness, reminding them that humans were much weaker in comparison. Midashuji nervously asked Amelia what they should do next. Amelia told Shuji to follow Heinrich's commands and orders, adding that she herself would lead the Fourth Order Knights in direct combat against the monsters. Heinrich then mentioned that he was about to say the same thing, but noted that some people were already down there fighting the monsters. Confused, Midashuji asked Heinrich who he was talking about. Nagase Rina then informed Shuji that Heinrich was referring to Erasure and his group, who had already gone down earlier. Shuji was stunned and asked Rina to repeat what she had just said. As the smoke began to clear, they saw that humans had stepped forward to face the monsters directly. The monsters began laughing, mocking Erasure and his group as idiots walking to their deaths. But Erasure simply responded that he didn't care whether they were demons or anything else. He would erase them all from existence. And with that, the battle between them began. Inside the fort, some monsters managed to break through a wall and launch an attack on the guards. Just as one of the monsters was about to strike down a guard, Midashuji stepped in, blocking the blow with his sword. Even the guard was stunned to see him. Without wasting a moment, Midashuji unleashed a stronger attack, extending his sword and quickly defeating the monster. Afterward, he felt confident in his ability to handle the situation, realizing his power was still growing. He then shouted to the others, encouraging them by saying that this was a battle they could win, urging everyone to fight without fear. Hearing his words, every hero candidate was filled with enthusiasm. As Midashuji got ready to fight again, he reminded himself not to hesitate, knowing that any sign of doubt from him could shake the team's confidence since he was their leader. He thought back to how Arajikai had taught him the harsh price of being naive. Meanwhile, Hashimoto called out to everyone, urging them to stop watching and join the battle alongside Midashuji. Nigase Rina began launching attacks, and Kinzaki started overpowering the monsters. The fierce battle between the monsters and the hero candidates raged on. Watching the hero candidates fight, the guards were amazed by their strength as they overwhelmed the Demon King's army. Heinrich then shouted to the guards, telling them to support the hero candidates so they could push back the demons. The guards agreed and charged into the fight, joining forces with the heroes in a long and intense battle that eventually ended with the defeat of the Demon King's army. Amelia excitedly declared their victory, and the guards erupted into celebration. As the sun began to set, Midashuji stood silently, lost in deep thought. He was soon approached by Heinrich, who asked if it was his first time fighting in such a way and how he felt about it. Midashuji admitted that it was difficult learning to handle battles on such a large scale. He explained that during the fight, his focus had narrowed, making it hard for him to issue commands properly. Heinrich praised Midashuji's efforts and also credited the hero candidates for their crucial role in the victory. However, he warned them to stay alert, reminding them that while they had only faced mid-level enemies with smaller numbers this time, the high-ranking demons will be much more dangerous due to their superior strength. Hearing this, Midashuji became serious and promised to keep Heinrich's warning in mind. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the Demon's Den, where a monster was reporting their defeat to Stone Gaia, one of the 4 heavenly kings of the Demon King's army. The monster apologized for failing its mission, which enraged Stone Gaia.